sleep is one of the major regulators of both stress hormone and reproductive hormone. When your stress hormones are high, your reproductive hormone levels get suppressed, which is nothing but bad news if you're trying to get pregnant.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health Counseling and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am our vice president in charge of the behavioral health department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are a podcast designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So our guest today joins us from New Jersey, but does services and sessions with people all over the place. We've got Becky Ackerman here with us today. Becky is a fertility coach. So Becky is a fertility survivor herself, and then also helps women who are struggling to get pregnant, helping those women to feel more calm and more confident and more in control through a journey that in a lot of times just feels completely out of our control when we're in it. And so being able to feel calm while we're going through a fertility journey is a huge asset for so many people, in a place where there isn't very much natural support for something that is so life-changing. So welcome, Becky. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. So tell us, what is a fertility coach? And then will you tell us how you got into fertility coaching?
Absolutely. So a fertility coach comes in lots of flavors, I like to say. But what it primarily is sort of an extra support person. Because like you mentioned, there's not really a lot of support out there. It's not something that we talk about with our friends. Sometimes we don't even talk about it really with our families. And, you know, fertility clinics, I think, are getting better about providing sort of the holistic portion, the mind body sort of stuff. But most fertility clinics still don't. You are there for something very specific, and this other part of it sort of gets left off to the side. So that's where I come in. And I got to this because I had my own struggle to get pregnant. It took us 6 years to get pregnant with our first child. In the end, I did conceive naturally, but not before we spent 3 years before we figured out I had endometriosis and a fibroid, none of which I had any symptoms for. So we had to get those removed, cleared out, and in the process found that one of my fallopian tubes was completely fluid filled, probably as a result of the endo. So that actually took 2 surgeries, because the first surgery I had given my husband instructions that nothing was to come out. And so he held true. And when the surgeon came and asked, "Can I just take the tube out?" he said, "No, you can't." So the doctor pinned it and drained it, but that's a temporary solution. So about 7 months later, I had to have a second surgery to have it removed. We went through many, many rounds of IUI, none of which did anything. And by anything, I mean, I never produced any more than 1 egg. One of the cycles, I ovulated spontaneously before they could do the trigger shot. And so I went in and he was like, "Nope, this cycle's over. Like, we're done. Nothing we can do." And we were just at the point where the doctor was starting to push us toward IVF when we found out actually that we were moving. We had been living in Puerto Rico, and we found out that we were being moved up to New York. And I said, "Okay, well, this is a great moment for me to take a break. I just want to enjoy the rest of our time here." And so I did. And when we got settled in New York, I decided, okay, well, I want to come back to this, but I want to do it very differently. And so I started looking at some more sort of alternative options. And I started seeing a woman for Mayan abdominal massage, and I found a hypnosis practitioner, and I started going to an acupuncturist. And it was after 6 months of all of that that I got pregnant. Um, and I'll just add a little bit more that the light bulb moment was really with my second, when I got pregnant immediately and then miscarried immediately and thought, oh, no big deal. I'll be pregnant again, in a hot second. And 14 months later, I still was not. And I don't know what triggered it, but one morning I kind of woke up and was like, oh, I'm not meditating. I'm not doing any of the visualizations that I did, before I got pregnant with the first one. And so I started doing them and got pregnant the next cycle. And that was where I really went, okay, so there's a lot more to this than just sperm and egg meeting. There's a whole other side that nobody really talks about, that's important to talk about and to help women sort of understand whether they are hoping to get pregnant naturally or using an assisted technique. It doesn't matter. Coaching is for anyone in any place.
Yeah. And I'll say right at the beginning, and we haven't talked about this on the episode, but we talked about it beforehand, so I was going to bring it up, that I recently got pregnant through IVF. So I did IUI rounds and things like that as well. I'm sure most people listening maybe have no idea what that is. I know I had no idea. And I feel like fertility is kind of like a world where you, unless you're in it, know nothing about it, because it's not talked about. So when you were first starting out in your journey, how did you, like, without having a coach, like, figure out what to do and where to go and what your steps were, and how do you recommend people figuring all of that out?
So there was a lot of fumbling. I mean, there was a lot of fumbling, but the journey is sort of an evolution. We started out assuming that it was going to be really easy. I was a personal trainer at the time. I was in great shape. I ate really well. And it was like, this will take zero time. And so at about the 4 month mark, I was like, oh God, there must be a problem, which, just as a caution to anyone out there, 4 months is way too early. It feels like a long time, but it's way too soon to assume that you have a problem. Because a lot of us really do just need time. And usually your doctor, because of that, will make you wait for a year before they start testing. For whatever reason, at 9 months, my doctor said, okay, let's do some tests. And that was when she originally saw that one of my tubes was partially blocked. But her advice to me was, I wouldn't do anything with it, because if we open you up and do surgery, we could make it so much worse. Which I later learned is 100% the wrong advice. So when you're part of the evolution of the journey is you trust your doctor to tell you the right thing. And so it can send you off on a long detour in the wrong direction. In hindsight, if I'd been able to have somebody who knew anything about this to talk to, that would have been really great. I mean, the only people I really talked to about it were my husband and my mother, and neither of them knew anything about it. So it was just a lot of fumbling around in the dark, and until I got to a point where I was like, okay, so we know what the problem is. Or in my case, we know the problem theoretically has been resolved, but it's still not happening. So there must be something else, because I've been told that there is no other problem.
Yeah, I think it seems on the surface, and so many people go into it feeling like this is just biology. This is a physical situation, that we, are should be kind of treated with a physical treatment. And so that's where we go medical route for so many things. And absolutely, we want to be based there, but there are these other pieces. So what are some of those other pieces that you feel don't get, if somebody is starting this journey and they haven't, I mean, I feel like over the last year or so, I've learned so much just kind of following Chrissa through this, but there are so many things that I was like, I have no idea what that is. And I feel like Chrissa was kind of put in a situation, and I feel like this is probably fairly common, where you're learning so many things. You've got to learn it for yourself. You've got to research it for yourself from multiple different uh, places and sources. And then you're also at the same time, as you're looking for support and having these conversations with other people, you're having to explain these processes, these very complicated processes, to everybody that is kind of supporting you on your journey. And so, what are some of those other pieces that don't get talked about as much?
So one of the big ones that I think doesn't get talked about nearly enough is sleep. We live in a sleep deprived society. I mean, just generally we are. We all look at us, all of us with our coffee every morning or, morning and afternoon. We really don't get enough sleep. And sleep is one of the major regulators of both stress hormone and reproductive hormone. And when your stress hormones are high, your reproductive hormone levels get suppressed, which is nothing but bad news if you're trying to get pregnant. So, sleep, there is no exact number. Everybody is different, and there are people who can get away with very little sleep. But 8 hours is generally used as the benchmark. And so, if you're getting significantly less than that, it would be a good idea to try to add a little bit more, not a lot more, because just with anything that I'm going to talk about, when you jump in with both feet and say, I'm going to do all the things and I'm going to do them for an hour, like you're not. You're not. And then you're going to end up feeling worse than you did before. So if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep, think about trying to go to bed maybe 10 or 15 minutes earlier and just seeing how that goes. And if it goes well, little by little, you can add more. So sleep is a big area. Exercise is another one. Both too little and too much are problematic because exercise is another thing that helps regulate your hormones. So, we all hear or have heard stories about, female athletes who stop menstruating because they're doing just way too much exercise. But it doesn't even have to go that far for it to be too much exercise. So if you are somebody who likes to train for marathons or triathlons or just go out for long runs or long HIIT sessions or CrossFit or anything like that, maybe think about dialing it back a little bit if you're having trouble and just see where it gets you. Nothing has to be permanent. You can always think of it just as an experiment. Let's see what happens. Conversely, if you don't do any exercise at all, that could be problematic. And when I say exercise, it doesn't have to be anything strenuous and uncomfortable. Just going for a walk, a 20-minute walk every day, great. Then the other big pieces that I think we don't really talk very much about are mindset in terms of the way we talk to ourselves, our self-talk. So many of us are extremely negative, especially once you either get the news that it's going to be difficult for you, or you've already sort of perceived for whatever reason that you're having trouble, then that talk turns really negative. But your mind and your body are totally connected, and your body really does hear everything that you say in your head. And so when it hears you saying, I can't do this, it's going to be really hard, your body basically goes, yeah, it is. It's going to be really hard. So you sort of set yourself up with an extra barrier with negative thinking. And stress management, just general stress management. As a society, that's another thing we're really lousy with. Stress has almost become sort of a badge of honor for a lot of us. I can do all these things. Look at how much I can get done and look at how busy I am. It's not totally healthy. You got to find a way to relax, And that can mean so many different things. For everybody's way of relaxing can be different. For some people, maybe it's sitting on the couch. For other people, maybe it's just saying no. Like, I'm not going to do this thing that you're asking me to do. But you need to figure out what relaxation looks like for you, and then you need to actively practice it. So those in a nutshell are a lot of the things that I think we don't spend enough time talking about.
And I know what ended up working for you was kind of like taking a break and then going into like, you mentioned abdominal massage and hypnosis. And even with your second one, like working more on like that meditation and that positive thinking. Can you kind of talk about why maybe you think that worked? I know it kind of goes along with like your self-talk and your mindset, and how you got into
So
trying.
it goes along with that. It also, I mean, I can tell you about myself that I am a very hardworking, high achieving, a sort of type A person, which so many women are. And so the tendency is to try to work harder, to do more, to read more, to eat better, to and but you can't force it. This does not work like a job or like school where the more you do, the more successful you will be. This is actually the opposite in a lot of ways. If you can dial it down, you're more likely to have success. Again, either naturally or with whatever technique you've chosen to use. And I think that that was a lot of what happened with me. You know, acupuncture, I'm sure the needles did something, but I will tell you that having to lie still on a table for 20 minutes 3 times a week definitely did something for me. You know, because that's not my style. And it was so helpful. And I mean, I could tell when I was doing it, it felt amazing. When I was done, I would always feel so much more energetic, more positive, more refreshed. Um, so in a lot of ways, I think that it's really about slowing down and centering, to use sort of a buzzword, grounding yourself.
Yeah, I love that perspective, that addition by subtraction. And because when you mentioned school and work, a lot of times it can feel like that, where if I just keep pushing, if I just keep doing things, then I'll get to that outcome. And the truth is that if I stop doing things that don't align with, the goal that I'm trying to achieve, then that can have just as much or more impact for any journey that we're on. And I like that perspective too, because there is so much, or there can be so much guilt and shame around fertility issues. We get tremendous pressure as women to have children, and to be married and to have children, and oh, when's that going to happen? And so many people feel like it's a choice that people are making, and assume that it's a choice, and then have, resentment or anger about that choice that they assume that somebody's making. And that can really, really impact our feelings of self-worth as women, when it feels like the thing that society wants us to do, we're not able to do. And so then we can get very caught up in that, like, well, I need to be doing more. This is my fault that I'm not, right? Like, I'm not sleeping enough, and I'm not exercising enough, or I'm exercising too much, right? And so bringing it down to that stress management, and those internal processes, and building those up. So when you talked about self-talk, being able to have external messages coming into us, and having us be able to accept those external messages that are counter to the ones that we're typically getting in society. So, if most of our family members are saying, you need to have kids, every time we see them, when are you gonna have a baby? We need some of those counter messages coming in, and saying, like, your body will do what it needs to do, and your journey is going to be what it needs to be. And it can be so frustrating waiting for those things. We
Yes.
My husband and I tried for 4 years before we got pregnant with my daughter, and we did so many of these things. I just remember going, okay, what else can I do? And I just spend, like, at that time, it was like Pinterest was the thing. So it was like, you'd have my pin board, and I'd have, like, okay, tips for fertility, right? And for that 4 years, it was like these pin boards, and then I'd have, like, separate categories for different ones. And it felt like a whole project. Like, it felt like this is something I need to do. Um, but because society kind of shapes motherhood and being a parent and reproduction as something that you kind of are versus something that you do, it did create such a conflict for me because it felt like, well, I'm supposed to be able to do this, right? Like everybody's telling me like it's easy. And then everybody's getting married and getting pregnant in like 2 months, you know? So it's that feeling of like, well, this is what is supposed to happen. Am I not doing enough? You know, and I think that's that place where we have to be so careful. And we have to bring in those external messages to kind of fight that feeling for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and along with that goes the perfectionist tendency, which unfortunately tends to show up more often in women than in men. That aim to like eat perfectly. I'm going to eat the perfect diet and I'm going to cut out, all my sugar or all my carbs or, whatever it is. And then beating yourself up when you have a cookie or, something like that. And I guess it's important to also realize that like perfect doesn't exist. There is no perfect. Uh, so be kind to yourself. Because in the end, a cookie's not going to matter. And maybe a cookie's going to be just the thing that you need because it's going to actually make you feel happy in that moment. I went through that actually with alcohol, where I like cut out all the alcohol. And I love to have a glass of wine with dinner, but I cut it all out. And one night I was out with my husband and some friends, and everybody ordered a drink, and I wasn't going to. And then I realized that I was getting really angry about like how unfair it was. And that was the moment where I was like, forget it. I'm going to just keep drinking my wine until I'm pregnant. And I did. And I don't think it made one iota of difference. So those are things to look out for too. Where are you adding stress that's unnecessary for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I see that even like I'm in a bunch of different like IVF Facebook groups and they'll be like, oh, I ate a cookie. Is that going to ruin my stem shots before egg retrieval? And I was like, I eat ice cream like every night after stem shots because that was like your reward for giving yourself a shot in the stomach. So yeah, I definitely think when people stress over it, like that can affect it too, like making it worse.
Yeah.
So with your sessions, I know they're online. What kind of things do you do in session? Do you work more on like the mindset? Is it more like learning about the different steps of fertility, or what can people expect from those?
So what I like to look at is sort of all the things that we've talked about. I talk about sleep. I talk about stress management. We do touch a little bit on diet and supplement because there's a time and a place. It's important to talk about, maybe not obsess over, but at least talk about. And then it's in large part up to the client where they want to focus. A lot of times it does end up being mindset because that's usually the hardest piece to sort of wrangle on your own. And so we do a lot of exercises looking at control. Where do you have control versus where do you not have any? Because interestingly, we very frequently don't realize where we have no control. And a lot of times we spend all our energy on those things that we have no control over. And so once you can recognize that, oh, my energy is better spent over here, and these things I should just let go because no amount of anything is going to influence it, that can be really helpful. We also look for negative thoughts, work on identifying negative thoughts so we can flip those around into maybe positive, maybe just neutral statements that they can then either put up as affirmations or just at least have a list for themselves. We do spend a lot of time talking about support and where they're getting their other support. What do they need? A lot of time talking about feelings. It's really okay that you are jealous of your friends. It's fine. It doesn't make you a petty human. It's totally natural and it's fine. That one comes up a lot, I think, almost more than any other. I feel jealous and I feel bad about feeling jealous. So that's a big one to get rid of. And then We do also talk about what they can expect at their appointments. We look at, what the doctor has said at the last visit. All right, what do you want to do? In some cases, I have talked women through clinic changes. Um, I had one client who was dealing with some secondary infertility, and as we were working through all this, she came to the realization that she actually didn't want to have another child. So you never know what's gonna pop up, but we tend to talk about all the things.
And what is secondary infertility? I haven't heard that term
Yeah,
before.
sorry. So secondary infertility is infertility that occurs in a woman who already has one or more child that she has conceived on her own. And it tends to occur at the exact same rate as primary infertility, which is infertility in a woman trying to get pregnant for the first time.
Interesting. Yeah, I would imagine there are some very unique challenges with secondary infertility. And I would imagine, especially if your first child was conceived naturally and in kind of an easy way where you go, oh yeah, this is just how it's going to be, and then having that secondary infertility. So very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. I know that you have your website, Lillian B Fertility, and I did check out some of your blog posts, and you've got one about supporting family members or supporting friends who are going through infertility. Can you give us some information about maybe ways that we can be supportive to other people who are going through this?
Absolutely. So I think the tendency that people usually have when they have a friend or a relative in distress is to sort of help them try to problem solve, right? And and it's very well meaning, but it ends up coming out as unsolicited advice. Unsolicited advice is almost never welcome advice. That's not 100% true. Sometimes it works out really well for everybody, but usually it doesn't. Usually the receiver ends up angry and upset. So, a better way to deal with this is to simply ask, how can I support you? What would be helpful for you? Um, because you'll get an honest answer. If the answer is, I don't want to talk about this with you, they're going to tell you that, and that's fine. I respect that, please. But you might be surprised. They might say, I'd really love it if you could come to the doctor's appointment with me. Or, if we could go out once a week for coffee, that would be really great. You never know, but your best course of action is to flip it around and ask what they need from you.
Mentioned that you like really only talked to like your husband and your mom about it. Do you recommend, or in your personal experience, was it good like keeping it kind of to yourself, or do you recommend like finding more support and reaching out to people and getting other people included?
I have found that that is a really, really, really personal and individualized decision. I know women who have broadcast it to everybody and have found that to be really helpful. And I know other women who were like me and didn't want to tell anybody. I just, it, for me, it was too much. I didn't want people feeling that they could check in, what's going on? What's the latest? And also, all of my friends were having babies. By the time I had my first baby, most of my friends had two, some of them had three. And so I was like, I couldn't talk to any of them about it. And I don't think they probably would have been super comfortable talking to me either, because what am I supposed to say? Like, I've got the thing she wants. Like, it's an uncomfortable thing for everybody. So I follow your gut. When you're in the situation, whatever feels right to you is right. Some people like some people find a lot of support on Instagram. Other people find Instagram to be the worst possible place that they could go. It really depends.
Yeah, and so having the coaching just really offers that space that's specifically designed for that. knowing that you're talking with someone who has been through some of the things, knowing that that is a confidential service and that this is a person I can talk to that has nothing to do with my life. I'm not going
Oh,
to run into them at Mommy and Me, in
yep.
3 years or whatever it is. Like, I'm just that this is a person that I can kind of separate that out, or that aspect of my life, because there is uh, sometimes a sense of, well, I don't want to talk about it also because, if these things don't work, right, it's painful to go through that process every time and have people ask like, oh, how did this one go? And how did this one go? And not have that work. So I think that it makes sense why some people keep that to themselves. But then when that happens, it's so difficult to have that support out there. And especially if family members are not as supportive of the treatments, there is a lot of stigma still about the treatments and about IVF and about IUI, and just there are a lot of different opinions out there,
There are.
and those can be not very helpful sometimes. So I think when we're trying to kind of keep that process keep our mindset about that process as clear and as pure as we can about it, I think that does make sense to have somebody that's kind of separate from our lives to be.
Yeah. Yes, it absolutely does.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, gosh, there are so many pieces. So when we say fertility coach, there are so many different challenges with fertility, and there's so many processes that people go through. So do you work with people from all different uh, challenges, and also, or in all the stages of fertility and infertility?
I do. I will tell you though that most of the women who come to me have already been at it for a very long time and are sort of reaching that end moment where it's like we've only got maybe money for one or two more treatment rounds and we're starting to get really nervous that it's not going to happen. So now we're going to throw everything that we have at it. And one of the things that I would really love to be able to accomplish is to get women coming sooner, so that they have some of the tools to get through this from the very beginning, so that maybe it won't get all the way to that desperate moment. There are some studies that show that women who do mindset work, meditation, that kind of thing, have a shorter number of cycles, IVF cycles required to pregnancy. It was a small study, obviously more work needed, but the more of this that you do, the more you're able to manage your stress, the more you're able to manage your thoughts, the better you feel as you're going through it. So there's certainly that part of it, that you don't need to wait for years to feel better while you're doing this. So come sooner, because you never know how it's going to help you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because I think in the beginning, it's very easy to go, okay, well, that time kind of goes quickly. In my experience, it went
Yeah.
somewhat quickly, and we went, oh my gosh, it's been 2 years, and
Yeah.
and so establishing those, and we say this all the time with counseling, like, go to counseling when you're not in a crisis, right? Because when you build that relationship when you're not in crisis, then when you are in crisis, you've got that relationship established. You're not starting from scratch with your counselor. You have that established, and now you can really just focus on the challenge at hand. And so with fertility coaching, I think that's a great point. It's probably very similarly true, where if you start sooner, then you can have that process kind of building as you go, and you've got somebody. Then, if you do progress through to IVF, you've got somebody who has known your story and has been with you through all of the parts that lead up to that. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who is maybe thinking, oh, it's not to that point, like I don't feel like I'm like stressed out to that point where I need like some additional support, but like I feel like I'm struggling, I'm picturing myself before my daughter was born, going like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, right? But like you said, I think in that time, I probably would have said like, I don't know if that I need, right, a specific coaching program. So what might you say to somebody who might think, maybe it's too early, maybe I don't qualify, right, to have fertility coaching because it's only been a year, it's only been 2 years, right? What might you say to that person?
So to the person who's concerned they don't qualify, I would say you absolutely qualify. As soon as you know that there's a problem, as soon as you feel that there's a problem, think that there's a problem, or have been told by a doctor that there's a problem, you're in. Sorry, but you have entered the club at that point. Um, I would say if you're on the fence and you don't think it's time yet, I would at least do your research. There are a lot of different fertility coaches out there, and some of them focus more on nutrition, others focus more on stress management. Some of them focus more sort of on the procedural, like I'm going to hold your hand at every appointment kind of thing. So look around and see what's out there so that when you decide that you really need it, you already know where you're going and who you want to talk to. But again, like I said before, don't wait too long. Don't wait until that moment where you are like clutched and really starting to feel some panic. Come before. We can give you the tools that will keep you from getting to that point.
Yeah, and I think even like you said at the beginning, a lot of people like are told don't go to your doctor until it's been a year, which yeah, I agree 4 months is too little, but we waited a year and I wish we wouldn't have. But I feel like it like just we waited a year and dragged it out. So I mean, with fertility coaching, like you don't have to wait that year and you can be seen before. So if you're
Yeah,
struggling,
absolutely.
to reach out earlier.
Yes.
And you mentioned like a lot of clinics have started to add that component, but I know like both the clinics we went to didn't have any type of coaching or like holistic approach at all. Do you think that would have helped you? I mean, eventually you reached out to it on your own. Is that what kind of led you to become a coach yourself? Is seeing that it was a
Yeah.
lack of things? Can you kind of talk about like that experience of becoming a coach even?
So I already was a coach in that I was a personal trainer and a health coach and a group fitness instructor. So that coaching background was already there. And after I went through this, I was really like, wow, I wish somebody would have told me about this sooner. Like, I really think had I known about this earlier, things would have been a bit different. It still would have taken me at least 3 years, but um, so that was why I decided to pivot. I was like, all right, I've already got the base, and now I have a little nugget of knowledge that I think not a lot of women know, and certainly not a lot of people talk about. And that was what led me to it, because for sure, I think it's a crucial piece, especially given that most of us don't have a good support system, um, because of the nature of the thing where we don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about it with the people who have already had children, you know?
Yeah, I always wonder how much also the economic factors of the last, 10, even 20 years, and generations where there's so many more older people from that baby boomer era right now, and so housing is still held by older people, and there hasn't been kind of that transfer, and so I feel like younger people now who are kind of in that age where they would be beginning to start a family are waiting or having to wait, and this is kind of more anecdotal, just me, seeing that in other people where it's like, that need to have to wait. And student loans are a whole other thing, right? So where people are having to wait until they're older. And I was 31 when my daughter was born, right? So because we're kind of waiting until we're older, I didn't get married till 27, and so we didn't start until older. And I think that really amplifies the pressure then, and that external component that causes a lot of that stress within ourselves, because the time frame of the previous generations is not the time frame that makes sense in the time period that we're in. And so then feeling like, my friend got pregnant, and everything was like geriatric pregnancy, geriatric pregnancy. She's going, I'm not even 40, right? And so it felt like that because she was like 35, and so,
Yeah.
um, because of those messages, I think it just can really, make the time that we're living in, it can make that infertility or those fertility struggles just feel that much more amplified. And so I think because of the time period that we're living in, we need to have the tools to be able to combat that stress that can come with those external pressures.
Yeah. Uh, and it's interesting. So I'm on the East Coast outside of New York City, and women out here, there are so many career women that the average age of a first-time mom is higher. I think it's higher here than just about any place else in the country. And you sort of hinted at this, but our biology does not evolve according to our society. And so our biology is still, back on the savannah thousands and thousands of years ago, but life looks really different now. And so that does for sure amplify it. The career, the socioeconomic piece, like you mentioned, but all of it, women are waiting longer. And that is one of the pieces that is driving this. And yes, you get to a certain age and your life has gone exactly as you'd like it to go. You're living a happy life, but now all of a sudden you decide the next step is to have a child, and your body's like, well, that should have already, like, you know, if you were doing it according to my timeline, you would have already done that. And so there is sort of that disconnect between the way we live and the way our bodies are set up, for sure. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because I'm 35 and my husband's 37, and he keeps talking about how we're going to be like the oldest parents, and everyone's like already had like 2 or 3 kids. But I was like looking on a social media group and saw like in New York, people are our age or older and pregnant with their first kid. So it's just because we're in Iowa that it
Yeah.
makes it
I
like
was
sound
pregnant
bad.
with my first was born when I was 36 and my third was born when I was 41. So
Yeah, see, so it's not bad. It's just Iowa makes it seem bad.
I
Um,
mean,
yeah, it does. Small town.
but no, yes, you're correct. If you were out here, you'd fit right in
Yeah.
and nobody would bat an eye.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you tried other services like acupuncture when you were in your fertility journey. Do you recommend your clients who are receiving coaching do acupuncture and massage and things like that as well? Do you recommend starting with coaching first, or what do you recommend that process look like?
That's a good question. I I talk about it. I don't know that I recommend it necessarily. Acupuncture is like an amazing thing, and there are of all sort of the mind body things that are out there. Acupuncture is the one where there's been some actual scientific research done that shows that it really does decrease your time to pregnancy. So acupuncture is a great one. Uh, if you were going to do just one thing, that's a good question. If you were going to do just one thing, I would say start with coaching because there's a foundation there and we can look at lots of different things. And a good acupuncturist will do that as well, but they don't all. And some of those other pieces are also important. Sleep. Your acupuncturist may not talk to you about sleep or exercise. It's in some ways, and I don't say this negatively, but it's a little bit like the fertility clinic where they have a product, that they are selling. That's their tool and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you walk through their doors, you need to know that's what you're going to get.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of resources out there, but when you go to that resource, there's a lot of work that goes into, is that the right resource for me before we even go in for that. So and we can't leave that up to the clinics to do that process for us because that's not their role in the journey. So then it does fall on us. It falls on the
Yeah.
individual, or in the couple, to find those things and talk through those things. What do you see in terms of, so you work primarily with women, but do you see any kind of trends or patterns that come up for spouses, for partners of the women that you're working with. I know for us, our journey was very challenging on my husband, and I know that can be very challenging on marriages and relationships. And the top three reasons for marriage divorce, right? Money, kids, and religion. And kids are fertility is a huge part of that category. So, what kinds of things are you seeing with partners and spouses?
So lots of different things. There's a wide range, from the spouse who is there and supportive but doesn't really know how, because in a lot of men and women communicate really differently, right? In many cases. And so a lot of times the women are like, he's here and he's supportive. I mean, it's great. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's not opposed to any of this, but he doesn't really know what to say or what to do. I almost think I hear that more than anything else. Um, I've worked with a couple clients where the husband is really upset and maybe seeing his own person. I don't work with couples just because that's not my thing. But for the most part, and I think there's a little bit of self-selection here, like there's a reason they're looking for a fertility coach, and that is usually that their partner has been good to a point and now they need something more, which is kind of what I tell people, like, come to me because your partner maybe can't talk about it anymore. Your mother has no idea what to say to you, and your friend who just had a baby, well, that's going to be awkward for both of you.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's such a life altering situation that we find ourselves in, and even for me, and it sounds like for you too, having your children and raising your children, and for me raising my child, it still stays with you. I feel like, I mean, it just doesn't uh go away. It's still a huge part of our lives, and a lot of times just impacts the way that we think about things so much. And so I think it's so important, and I like that, if somebody calls to talk to you, they know, no, this is my person for me. And if my partner needs somebody as well, then there are coaches out there that can help work with our partner or our spouse. And I'm sure there are coaches that work with couples too,
There
just like
are,
in
oh, absolutely.
therapy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, so and each of those three services being important independently, and then really being able to come together as well for that full support. But that way it's not putting all of those layers into one service. So wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you could give one suggestion maybe to somebody who's on the fence, who maybe thinks like, do I need this, right? Is this going to be useful to me? What suggestion might you give to them?
Nothing but good can come out of it. Um, you may not decide you want to do it long term, but there's always something to be learned, either about yourself or the way you think, or a technique or an idea that you haven't tried, that you haven't thought of. So I would say go for it. If it's not right, stop. Nobody's going to force you. So give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. Well, thank you again so much for being here. If you are listening to this episode and interested in fertility coaching, you can reach out to Becky at lilyandbfertility.com or on Instagram at lilyandbee fertility, and email her as well on her email. And I'm sure we'll list all of that in our show notes also.
I am Becky Ackerman, and I need a counselor.
Thank
I'm
you.
Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
So do you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.